Thank you, Committee Chair. Good morning, committee members. Good morning, all. My name is Aaron B. Miller. I'm with the city's finance department, and a little bit of an introduction and purpose behind this. Carrie and the mayor and I met, well, maybe in February or March before the COVID pandemic really stretched out, and to talk about the LTAC funds and how they work and the process. And as a result of that meeting, the mayor thought it might be a good idea to come up here and just kind of talk about the LTAC fund, its health, and a couple of changes that we're planning on instituting, small changes, I would say, to the process. I don't think I will talk for long at all, but we do have time for a Q&A afterwards. And what I hope is that this will be useful for everyone, provide a little bit more understanding. You should all have a packet with you. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the tourism fund itself. And we provided to you in your packet a page from our budget book that looks like this. And this is the tourism fund page. And it gives a little bit of a summary up at the very top of the fund and the rules around it. And I'm not going to spend too much time on that. What I really want to spend time on is a little bit about the rules of the road for government funds. In government, we have what's called fund accounting. So most of you have probably heard of the general fund, which is where most of the normal, I guess what I'm quote unquote, normal city services are paid from. We also have what's called a special revenue fund, and that's what the tourism fund is. The special revenue fund are reserved for those funds where we receive dedicated resources for a specific purpose, exactly like the tourism fund that we have. So those resources that go into the tourism fund can only be used for that purpose. We can't say, hey, we need another sewer line and take money from this and use it for the sewer. It can only be used for what law prescribes it to be used for. Monies that enter into that fund that are not used stay in that fund. So at the end of the year, if there's a budget that hasn't been used, and that money, it doesn't disappear, it rolls back into the beginning fund balance the next year, and can be reallocated by the committee at that time. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that that money stays in the fund. The budget lapses at the end of the calendar year. So the city of Shelton is on what's called a cash basis of accounting, which means we recognize expenses when money leaves when we write a check and money leaves our books, and we recognize revenues when money hits our books. There are some entities that are accrual based that would they recognize the expense when the expense is incurred, not necessarily paid, and recognize the revenue when it is earned, not necessarily when we receive it. We're not that way. So we are cash based, which means, and I'll talk about it in just a little bit when we get to the fund summary, that in cases where one of the contracts that we have, one of the grantees, provides their information in the following year, so 2020 for a 2019 allocation, and we pay that out of 2020, that counts against the 2020 budget, which is fine. What we will do as part of the council meetings is we'll do a supplemental budget. We'll increase the funds allocation, the budget allocation for that year. And all in all, it doesn't make a difference. It's just the money was spent one year rather than the previous year. But in terms of the financing of the fund, it makes no difference. Let's see. So as a city fund, I want to talk about the obligations of the city for that. So the use of these monies are eligible to be audited by the state auditor's office, SAO, and to ensure what we call legal compliance, that the money has been duly provided via contract for a service that meets the eligibility of the tourism dollars, and that proper backup has been received by the city for reimbursement to the organization, to the grant or grantee organization. So we are ultimately responsible for the activities of this fund and get audited every year on that. That is one of the main reasons that we go through the steps that we go through, where we have an application process. The LTAC committee, the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, provides a recommendation to the council that's approved, and then we enter into contracts. Contracts are very specific to state what they're receiving the grant monies for, and the expectations and what we need to have in return to pay them. The contracted services, just want to add this point too, whenever we provide funds to a private party that is going to go out there and we're going to contract with them, they can only use those funds for the same activities that the city could use them for. So one of the big, most often talked about, what am I trying to say, what's the word, hypothetical, is promotional hosting. So the city can't do promotional hosting. We can't have an event and say, come on down, we're going to provide drinks and you'll have a great time. That's the same thing with the grantees. So that whatever the city can do with the money, the grantees can do, but they can't do anything different than we can do. And so it's not that we've had any issues with that by any stretch of the imagination. I just want to make sure that the LTAC committee is aware of that, that there are those constraints around these dollars. So looking at this page again, the current year budget, just want to make mention, the city originally adopted a budget of, I believe, $51,000. And then what we did throughout the process, we went through and scrubbed, and we realized that $74,000, 74,000 and change, had been allocated by this committee. We're going to be, that's not a problem. We're going to have a budget supplemental coming up. We'll make that adjustment. It doesn't affect anybody's ability to spend what they've been contracted for at this point of time. So I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. The next thing I wanted to talk about briefly is our fund financials, and it looks like this. A snapshot in time going back to 2017. And I'll just go over it briefly. So going across the top of the years, you have the 2017 actual, 18 actual, 19 actual, the budget, and I want to just show you there's an asterisk there because this is the adjusted budget. This is for the 74,780 that the committee provided last year for this year's activities. And then you have the June year to date, and you can see where those are. So an example of monies being allocated in a previous year that then got paid for in this year are some of these, you know, a good example is the Forest Festival. It was allocated in 2019. The receipts for that activity came in 2020. We made payment, and so we'll have to do a budget adjustment for that $9,000. And you can see that a little bit between the budget for 2019 original budget, which is on this page again. I hope this is understandable. Was $61,000. We ended up paying about $52,000 out, and you can see that that $9,000 makes up most of that difference there. Again, going back to the fund financial page, the taxes that we bring in each year are around $50,000. You can see on the top half are the resources that come in. The bottom half are the expenses, what contracts they've gone to. Then you have your change in fund balance, which is just simply the amount of resources in, less the expenditure, and then that changes the ending fund balance. And then that fund balance goes right to the top of the next year, and you can see where we are. So that's what I mean when I say the funds, any unspent funds, like in 18, where there was more revenue than there were expenses, that just adds to the fund balance, and that is eligible for allocation. We have in the city a fund balance target number. We don't have one for the tourism fund. We just need to make sure there's enough money in the tourism fund to pay what the grants, the amount that the grants are for a given year. But there's no requirement that we keep $118,000 of fund balance like we have in there now. So, you know, if in some year there's other activities that come forward, that is eligible to be used as part of the grants. Real quickly, the one thing that is changing, really the only thing that's changing, is our reimbursement requirements, and we're just adding a little bit of language to strengthen what we are asking for, and it's on this page. Looks like this page here in your packet.
The page number?
It looks like page number 11. It looks like. Wait until everybody gets there. It has red on the bottom of it. Oh, there might be in black.
Okay.
Excuse me. So what we need in order to make reimbursement, you can see, I'm just going to read it straight from the page. If the applicant is a nonprofit corporation, such as a 501c3 or a 501c6, and is a recipient of tourism money to support their ongoing operations, a quarterly reimbursement attestation must be provided for reimbursement. At the city's request, a copy of the annual the annual report must be provided. But the attestation is on the back side of this page, and it looks like this. It's this memo. And what it asks for reimbursement, this is just as an example, the organization puts their name, or puts the signature authority name in the first spot, and then the organization name throughout, and then they will check on the top half. In this case, if it was a 501c3 or 501c6 supporting operations, they would just simply check D, the box on D, about halfway down, saying that this money was granted for our ongoing operations, which meet the tourism standards. And then on the bottom, they would just check where that money went. So if the recipient is a 501c3 and they got $10,000 a year, they get $2,500 a quarter, and they spend $10,000 on salary, you can just press, just check the salary and put the $2,500 for your quarterly reimbursement there, sign it, and bring it forward. This just allows the city to have backup should the state auditor ask us, how do you know that the funds were used in the way that they were intended? And we say, well, we have this attestation, this organization knows what they're doing, they've had this money before, and we've received this information that complies with the tourism fund in the RCW, or the tourism rules as provided by the RCW. If the recipient is receiving tourism monies for an event, they must provide receipts, relevant receipts, applicable receipts for that event. And once we receive those, then we can process the reimbursement. So it's a little bit different if you're receiving money for ongoing operations or if it's an event. But those things are required for us to make reimbursement. All the other contractual obligations are still in place. There's no changes to that. And so from this side of things, it's mostly just a paperwork for us so that we have a way to provide backup. That's really all I had. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about any of this information or any other information.
Any questions, Ron?
No, pretty much. Will you guys be mailing us this memo, or will it be included with this packet online, or when will this come up?
When the decision has been made, who are the recipients of the grant funding, and their contract is prepared and ready, they will also receive the attestation document will be a part of it. Mhm. So they,
In our case, it's receipts, so it's not.
That's right.
yeah, but that they understand that it's part of the package.
Okay. No questions from Dave? You're all right, David? I'm fine. All right.
When as I understand that our entities, we make a report after a bluegrass forest and then we go before the council, then we get paid. And we've requested this before and it hasn't happened yet, but I'd like to, as I understand, the chamber and the museum goes to the council reports, but we never hear that. You may because you're involved with the museum, but we don't know the quarterly reports that the chambers make into the council. Yet we're really involved with giving them money and understanding, are they doing what we ask them to do? And so could we arrange that either they meet us or send us their presentation that they give to the city, something like that, so we're in the loop of what's going on. Does that seem, remember we discussed that last year?
That seems reasonable.
Feel like
So would you like to be sent the report that they submit to council?
Some information,
That's-
sure.
That's
If
easy
that's
enough to
possible, I
do.
don't know if I could do that or not.
Sure.
It's quarterly,
we
so.
can do that.
Right.
And Aaron, I wanted to mention too that the museum and the chamber who do visitor services and are required to give quarterly reports, their fourth quarter report is always in the following calendar year because of the date. And so that money is spent the following year. Or
Correct.
spent by the
correct.
city.
And that's one of the, because we are cash based, that's one of the reasons that we'll have to take a supplemental
Right.
and add that money at the beginning of each year.
In that case, thank you, Aaron.
You bet.
Thank you.
Can we ask some questions remotely, Donna?
Oh,
Heidi has a question.
Heidi has a question.
Thank you. So just for sake of transparency, Deidre and I are both here since she's helped with writing of the contracts, et cetera, in the past. We have some questions as far as, so ours is a reimbursement for services provided. It's not a reimbursement for funds that go towards advertising or that go towards salary or whatnot. It's the service itself that's provided. And Dwayne, you might be able to clarify this a little bit too, because I know you've been part of the county LTAC committee for some time. But they've taken steps to get away from saying X has been provided, X has gone towards this and X money has gone towards that, because it's within the scope of the contract itself that says, here's the entire budget for the year, here's the services that will be provided, and then the quarterly reports basically is the support or the proof that those activities have been carried out. So I'm a little bit confused why we're taking this step back and kind of making it a little bit more onerous as far as the reporting requirements. And Dwayne, do you remember, I know that there was some questions that the state auditor made it really clear that for the sake of the service, it was a reimbursement on services, not receipts that were spent.
I remember the discussion, but I guess I don't remember the particulars, but I think that basically what Heidi's saying is they were going, basically they just attest that they did it and they don't provide. You know, that's a little different deal.
Correct. We're, in this case, we're not asking the chamber, if it's for just ongoing operations, to provide receipts. They don't need to. Only if it's an event, only if it is a special event, do we need to have receipts. What we're
Aaron,
asking,
The same for the museum for visitors.
same for the
services.
museum for
Only
visitors.
those two.
Correct. What this is just, what we're asking them to do is just provide that, yes, they did the terms of the contract and they understand the rules. And so this shouldn't, I don't think this is an administrative burden, but I may be wrong.
Well, I think she's just saying how much goes to payroll, I forget what the specific, yeah, salaries and benefits, advertising activities. Basically, I think when they make their quarterly presentation and the city council
Sure,
approves
sure.
their presentation, then that's kind of self-put. Is that what you're saying, Heidi?
Yeah.
Rather than,
I should put it down into the
Those
bottom,
categories.
choosing a activity. I understand. Okay, well, maybe what we need to do is look at this and see if there's a revision that we could make on that. Yeah, I understand what they're saying.
Okay, and I can follow up later with, I'm sure that somewhere I have the materials where we reviewed in depth what the state auditor requirements were and why the county moved into that. So I'll see if I can locate those and get them over to you, so that you have that information.
I want to say thank you for doing this. First time
You bet.
the city's had a first financial person here to kind of explain what your thoughts are and guide us along a little bit here. So appreciate you doing that.
You bet.
Improvement.
Again,
Appreciate it.
thank you, Aaron. All right, no more questions. I guess we'll set a date for our next meeting. And we're gonna meet on September 25th, which is a Friday at 10 o'clock. Probably right here.